Hey everybody, welcome to Manage the Wild. I'm your host, Nick Madsen. Today we're going to be talking about hunting and whether hunting is additive mortality or compensatory mortality. Not familiar with these terms, it's completely okay. We all learn. Easiest way for me to explain additive mortality is, let's say you're carrying a bucket, and every time you go 10 feet, you throw a rock into the bucket, and it becomes heavier and heavier and more difficult to carry. Additive mortality is that same principle. Every time you hunt an animal and remove that from, it's taking directly from that population. That population's already affected by disease, it's already affected by other predators, it's already affected by weather, and now you are adding hunting on top of that, and it's putting more pressure on that population. But there is a different situation that may play out, that where hunting may actually help a population, and that's called compensatory mortality. Think of it as a scale. On this side, you have high population with degradation of habitat as well as survivability. And the larger the population gets, the more animals die because the habitat is in decline. You add hunting on this side, and hunting actually may balance that population to where you are not losing as many animals because you're keeping that population in check, where you're half of K and your population is just taking off, but you're also removing enough animals to where you're not experiencing habitat degradation. Habitat degradation happens, or can happen in certain situations. Let's say you have an area that all of a sudden has a large ski resort and a bunch of cabins. Now, that used to be good summer range or even winter range, depending on where it's built. And now you remove that from the landscape. So now you're packing more animals into a smaller area. And so they start to require different scenarios to help balance that population. We saw that within Yellowstone, where the elk population just exploded. They started losing a lot of aspens, and then the population started to decline. There was a bunch of disease and a bunch of die-offs, and now the population is lower, and you're seeing the ecosystems of Yellowstone being restored through a multitude of methods, not just wolves, but hunting outside the park, as well as some limited inside the park. You also have beavers that have been brought in to help restore some of that. And so there's a whole bunch of different things that are going on. So, easy way to understand additive mortality versus compensatory mortality is, let's say you have a large population of elk, and that population is growing. They're eating a lot of vegetation, and now they're starting to experience degradation of their ecosystem. They're just eating too many plants. The plants aren't regrowing. And so it's now causing these animals in these hard winter situations to die off. Also, you're going to experiencing a lot more elk and vehicle collisions, because now they are moving from one area to another, searching for different food sources because they are completely eating theirs. This is where wildlife managers come in, because now they are expected to do something to this population, because you have people being hurt from elk vehicle collisions, and you're having habitat degradation, which is causing these boom and bust situations where your population grows and then they die off, and you're losing 5,000 animals, and then they'll start to grow back up and then they die off again. So managers need to come in and understand whether it's additive or compensatory. A situation that we face here in the Intermountain West for the data going into the winter, they've gone out and they've done mule deer captures, and they find out that these animals are all skinny. And it doesn't matter where in the unit they're going, they are just skinny. And then at the end of it, wintertime, we find that we had 4,000 or 5,000 animals that have died because of starvation and a really difficult winter. The way that's compensatory is you have hunting on the other side that could remove some of these animals. And so it's not being added onto the mix, it's actually removing animals that were going to die anyways. Additive mortality, you see more in populations that are small or maybe isolated populations. Bighorn sheep is one. Let's say you have a population of bighorn sheep like you do on Antelope Island here in northern Utah. You have 100 sheep and they are facing disease, they're facing winter, and they're facing habitat degradation, and they're a very small, isolated population. And then you add hunting on top of that. So you're already losing them to disease, you're already losing some to winter, and you're losing them some to habitat, and now you're adding hunting on top of that, maybe taking out some of those more mature animals that would have survived. So, wildlife managers need to understand the systems they are working with and understand how much they can play with the numbers to help these populations out as much as possible. But there's also communication as well. Here in northern Utah, compensatory mortality with the mule deer, people want to keep that objective of 20,000 animals, 20,000 mule deer, uh, and they don't want to drop that. But let's say your carrying capacity is 20,000. Every time you get up to that 20,000 number of animals, you're having mass die-offs where you're losing 6 or 7,000 animals, dropping back down to 13,000 animals, and then you got to work to regrow that population. It's not easy to change your hunt structures. So you want to be at half of carrying capacity, because that on that bell curve, that shows the best reproduction as possible. But if you're above that, you're not getting that great of reproduction. So managers want to add more permits, but maybe the public doesn't. And so there needs to be some communication that goes in with that. That is how additive mortality and compensatory mortality works. If you guys have any questions, go ahead, hit me up. Have a great day. Stay wild.